Hello and welcome to Shakti Day One, where we speak with founders who are reimagining the world in the age of AI. Today, our guest is Amber Winton, the founder and CEO of Nextwork. Nextwork is a platform where anyone can become AI proficient. Amber talks about the lessons we've learned from past attempts at online education and skills development. She speaks about the future of work, her view on what will happen with AI refugees and where they will migrate to, and how skills can be developed to solve a problem as opposed to earning a degree in a particular subject matter. Amber also covers how different countries across the world are learning to adapt AI skills at a different rate and some of the more interesting similarities with how the internet evolved in the emerging parts of the world as opposed to the Western world in America. Please join me in this conversation with Amber Winton. Great to see you, Amber. How are you?
So good. So good. Great to be here. It's been a long time,
I've
so
been,
really excited.
it's been a while. I've been looking forward to this so much. Let's just get into it. You've been on this next work journey for a couple of years now. So why next work and why now?
Yeah, totally. Well, Nextwork, like as you know, is all around learning AI skills and being able to learn them, showcase them, connect with other people. And now just seems like the best time of all time to be learning AI. I remember thinking that a year ago, and then even before that, when we were doing a lot of data, a lot of cloud work, it's just kind of been this compounding problem to solve, really, when you think about the rate that skills are developing, the rate that technology is changing and coming out. You can see it, you can feel it, that almost everyone's job across multiple different sectors is being impacted by the rate of change around learning AI. And how can you keep up? How can you actually start to learn these skills, apply them, and then make sure that they're useful to you in your life and the work that you do or the work that you want to be doing. It's a huge problem, and I think that's what we're here to solve. So now is absolutely the time. Last week, last month was the time for sure.
What is the key insight that you have about how people learn and all of the prior attempts that have been tried on the internet um, in terms of skills training, education? What lessons can we learn from that, and how is Nextwork doing it differently?
Yeah. Well, I think that, I mean, my personal kind of journey to understand like how Nextwork came to be, I think played a lot into understanding the path that we've been on in terms of education and online learning. So when I started, I was doing a lot of skills and workplace training, initially in person for large corporations, and then online. And then as LLMs and these sorts of things came out, I was starting to use those as well in a lot of my trainings. And what you actually notice is that training is not just having access to content. I think we thought that when the internet came out and you just had access to content, that was going to be a solved issue. And now everyone in the world can kind of learn a new thing, and it's all done. But when you're looking at actually how good are these experiences, how good are the massive online open courses, how good is it to learn online today, you find that there are a lot of bugs, a lot of like key things that are wrong with the current systems, and usually they fall into three different categories. The content can often be outdated. It can just be straight up wrong. It can be incorrect. It can be confusing. It can be too easy. It can be too hard. This was a classic problem with a lot of the kind of more static online learning options out there. So a lot of the MOOCs, a lot of the Udemy's, the Coursera's, they were really focused on trying to scale content as much as they can through a marketplace model. And what this meant was that you had a whole bunch of different people from all over that were creating content. So you reached the scale, but at what cost? And the cost for them was around quality. And the quality was usually around the content being very quickly outdated or incorrect or not at the level of the learner who was trying to come and understand it. So that was a huge, and still today is a huge problem. You can see it even in universities. One of the critical issues with universities is that they're slow to adapt, they're slow to change to things that are coming up. And so content is a big problem, trying to find quality content. LLMs did a good job of that, but they haven't fully solved it. There's still things that are incorrect, and they don't address some of the other issues, which is around things like loneliness. As human as we all are, it can be really lonely when you're trying to learn a new skill by yourself. And in
Hmm.
fact, most of online learning is more akin to an exam where you're sitting by yourself and having to try and work out problems, solve things, look it up yourself, and you don't really have that long-term accountability or that long-term social structure that is needed if you want to make a real change or really want to upskill properly. You're looking at something that's more like, minimum 6 months and usually ongoing for your entire career, especially at the kind of current rate of change with a lot of the skills and technology that's coming out. So that social aspect becomes really critical, to have your tribe, have your people that are learning with you, and have that network. Really, really important. And then the last thing that happens, so say that you're learning and you kind of somehow make it through all this content that is, outdated, you're doing your own research, you struggle through it, you manage to somehow find your way through all of this loneliness. And then at the end, you realize you've learned a new skill, but how can you actually apply that in the real world? How can you create something that people are going to trust? And the way that we've been doing this is a lot through certifications, through badges,
Hmm.
through degrees. But over time, because they haven't had time to build up the credibility or the brand, like few have, for example, the Ivy League universities, Oxford, like these sorts of places have strong brand names. But in terms of an AI certification, it's very hard to have that trust behind it. And so you end up having this trust issue, this really weird conversation between the person that's trying to learn the skill and then the person who's trying to validate, do you actually have the skill, which is usually the job market or an employer. And that becomes a real issue. How do you trust? And this is where we need a new way of talking about skills, of verifying skills. We call this skill authentication. And I think a new form of resume is needed, one that is able to keep up with the pace of change and be a trusted form of skill verification, a skills resume, so to speak. So all of those things together, I think, is why this problem is so complex, why it hasn't been solved, and also kind of how I learned these different pieces: the content, the community, the credentials. All these three things is really what goes into a really fantastic learning experience, and they all have to be done, exceptionally well for it to work.
It's fascinating. I remember the first time you and I talked, and we went for this walk on near the Golden Gate Bridge, and I asked you this question about the lessons from our past, and you very succinctly, as you just did now, which is three legs of the stool: content, community, and credentialing. Maybe talk about how Nextwork is solving for that through the Nextwork product. So, what is it that we have done in the product that addresses each of those things, and maybe give an example?
Yeah, absolutely. So, content number one, there's both a cosmetic side to a content experience, a great UX, so to speak, and then there needs to be a factual accuracy. And then you need to be able to deliver that at scale. So, those are kind of the things that go into a great content experience. The UX part is really important because you want to have all of those really small, tiny details that make for a really great learner experience. You want to have things like an ask functionality or a chat functionality on hand so that you can dive deeper into things where you want. But you want to have a really succinct kind of one line view so that you're not getting distracted by a whole bunch of other things. You want to be able to copy code blocks really easily. You want to be able to take notes very easily. You want to have really fantastic screenshots that help to guide you on where exactly you need to go. These are the things that can sometimes sound like small details, but when you add them all up, it actually makes a huge difference to the UX or the learning experience. So I would not underestimate some of those UX details as part of a great content experience. But of course, if your facts are incorrect, if you don't have solid, actual accurate information, it doesn't matter how good your UX is, it will still be wrong. So that brings you to kind of the next part of a great content experience, which is making sure it's accurate. And accuracy, it was still a challenge, but it was easier because things didn't change as quickly. Now, I
Right.
would say the average freshness or like the expiry date of content probably has a lifeline of or a lifetime of maybe like 2 weeks max, especially with LLMs, especially with like new updates. I mean, you can kind of look at any hot topic that's gone out, this week and start to just look at how many changes, how many new releases, um, and realize that, okay, well, finding up-to-date projects, up-to-date content about how to learn these sorts of things is really difficult. It used to be a YouTube video or a project from a month ago, that would do. But today, if you were to watch or do a project that was a month old, it could very likely just be wrong, incorrect, because so
So
much has changed.
there was a skill on Nextwork today that we can learn that allows somebody to use Claude to build a Spotify or something like a
Yes,
Spotify. And
yes,
it's a really fun course. And the question I've always had with that is, to your point, um, Anthropic is launching new versions of the model pretty much every week. So how do we maintain the content up to date in real time? And how does somebody who took that course maybe 2 weeks ago can
mm.
still be assured that the skill they learned maybe 2 weeks ago, 2 months ago is still relevant?
Yeah, exactly. So in terms of keeping the content up to date, you can actually start to, I mean, Nextwork, really our goal is to become the most up to date source of truth for all like AI tooling, which is a pretty big ask because sometimes we're actually even ahead of the toolings or that company's technical docs themselves. Because we might be actually using their product or using the updated version before they have updated technical docs. So there's a combination of things that we do to make sure that we're trying to stay ahead of the curve. Um, one comes down to just scraping and looking for any sort of updates that are coming out from any of the tools that we are teaching. So whether it's a new PR on their repos, whether it's an announcement on X, whether it's something that's popped up on their doc or their support site, we're kind of fielding all of these different updates and notifications and then comparing them against the projects that we have to make sure that we are alerted if there's anything that's out of date. And then when that happens, we want to make sure that we're jumping on that really quickly and updating it. And right now, we're still doing that kind of like semi-automatically, semi-manually. But over time, like it will very quickly, we can see the path very quickly to that becoming a fully automated function, where it is just constantly being updated and constantly looking for where it's out of date. Um, and of course, we're always like talking to our learners. We've got a really good community, a really strong group in there, who are constantly also like feeding us new things that are happening, telling us about new tools that are coming out that they want to learn. And that also helps us to keep on top of, okay, what is moving really quickly here? So it's actually a very interesting, like global look at the almost the AI popularity, in terms of what people are all over the world and actually trying to learn, in different countries and age groups and communities. It's really fascinating, actually.
So let's talk about the community. Who are the people using Nextwork today? What is their typical profession? What are they using it for? And what kind of countries are we seeing most of the usage come from? And you probably
Oh,
have a
wait.
great window into how AI is rippling through the entire globe.
Yeah. Yeah, it's super, super interesting. Probably one of the more unexpected kind of side effects of Nextwork has been just this increasing database of global usage and adoption of AI, which I think as Nextwork grows is actually just going to become richer and richer. We can see what different countries are interested in, what topics a particular project might pop off in India and not in the States, or vice versa. So What we're seeing right now, I mean, Nextwork is used in over 190 countries. Um, and we're seeing usually the average age being 25 to 35. Most people are already in some sort of tech adjacent or just straight up tech sort of role, whether it's a software engineer, a cloud engineer, a data scientist, someone working in support, IT, like all sorts of different kind of tech adjacent roles. And I think these are the people that are finding next work when we're still in kind of these early stages, because they're the ones that are seeing the movement the fastest. They really understand
Mm.
that their job and their livelihood depends on their ability to continuously stay up to date with these sorts of tools. And a lot of them are being hit where they didn't expect to be hit, in their job security. It was always that a software engineer was going to have this really reliable, job for life. And now that's really at threat. A lot of people we see are, AI refugees, people that are now jobless because they've been automated out of it. So when that happens and you've got people that are thinking like engineers, love to build, they're naturally looking for how they can become that kind of future person, create those skills that are going to be valuable for them in the future, and um, that's where they find next work. So I think there's a bit of the age and the kind of the fear, I guess, behind a lot of people wanting to learn AI. But country wise, I do want to do a really kind of interesting comparison between the US and Africa, actually, which is like a very interesting sort of part of the world where it feels like they've almost skipped like a whole layer, a technical layer. They're going from sometimes very little power or electricity to using AI, and it's incredible to see actually the ideas that are coming out of there, and the way that people are thinking about solving problems. Just one of conversation that we had with the learner was about how they were seeing a problem in the medical field around trying to scale kind of the analysis of different medical reports. Huge bottleneck in trying to get prescriptions out to end clients and patients. And so what they did was because there weren't a lot of doctors in Nigeria where they were, they actually started training a model that was going to analyze and read these reports and then come out with kind of some recommendations for them. And so you can kind of see that instead of trying to solve it with human power or instead of trying to like take more traditional routes, they're almost just completely skipping a step and going straight to AI. And I think that could have
Mm.
really interesting flow-on effects, Whereas in the US, it's a much more established technical economy.
Mm.
And so
Huh.
you're more looking at like the upskills rather than the transformational huge jumps, if that makes sense.
It reminds me of the telecoms and the internet revolution in terms of how it spread in the US versus in emerging parts of the world like Africa and Southeast Asia, where a lot of the users who got on the internet in those countries just skipped the desktop. They didn't have a laptop or a PC. They went straight to the mobile phone. And many of them, so for example, many people, I mean, I grew up in India and now I go there often, and a lot of people don't have email, but everybody has a mobile phone number. And so it is similar, maybe transformation here where people are skipping several layers of the tech ladder and going straight to AI versus maybe the US or the Western Hemisphere. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think so. And it's interesting, when you look at countries now, like you say, that are mobile native, and
Yeah.
everything is done on mobile, like they're paying on their mobile, their whole lives is just built on the phone. It does make you wonder, like, what is that going to be for these countries that are AI native first, that are kind of making that jump. Um, it's an interesting thing
Ex-
versus like upskilling versus starting from scratch. Where is it going to end up? It's
yeah.
it's fascinating.
Will there be a Nextwork AI native index of countries?
Yeah, I think so. I think, yeah. I mean, as we get more and more people on the platform, I think that there's kind of an area of research that I think would be really interesting to look into for next work, which is almost like a indicator of the AI skill level of different countries. If we could get to a side where there are so many people on Nextwork that we could actually start to report on some of that information, I think it would be really fascinating, and really interesting to get a read of humanity's skill level from a global point of view. I think that having that sort of information could really help us to look at where do we need more skills, what are the problems that humanity currently faces, how can we make sure that skills are getting to be available to the right people so that we can actually start to try and solve some big problems that need a global look or need a global collective to be able to solve. I think that taking that global view is incredibly powerful.
Yeah, you use this phrase AI refugees, and I want to explore that a little bit, as you, and maybe in the broader context of what's happening with the future of work in the age of AI, and um, what do you think is likely to happen over the coming decade in terms of job functions, skills, even maybe the way companies are organized? I mean, I sort of think
Mm.
like the modern corporation is still the same as Alfred Sloan and General Motors sort of invented, which is these functional organizations. There's an engineer, there's a product manager, there's a salesperson, there is a finance person. What do you think is likely to happen in the future? Will roles change? Will there just be what will be if you're an AI refugee? How do you what's the rebirth look like? What's the reincarnation of an AI refugee? How do they come back? What do they look like?
Yeah. Where do you migrate to?
Migrate, yeah.
Yeah. I think work will definitely change the structure of how. I think we'll always be working together in groups and teams, but I think the roles in those teams are very much blurring, largely because the bottlenecks are changing. The bottleneck used to really be around the build itself. It used to be that just shipping something was a barrier, and so to overcome that, to get to even just play, you had to kind of already invest a lot into this bottleneck around engineering. But now that that's table stakes and everyone's got a seat at the table, so to speak, then it becomes what's the next bottleneck, and the bottleneck really does start to be things like design and taste and having more of actually like that product manager decision sort of thing, and actually what is going to be needed, what decisions do we want to make, and when that becomes the bottleneck, it's a really, really interesting place because then you start thinking about more models on how do you make these decisions better and faster and more accurately. And following that kind of train of thought, it really starts to come down to the speed that you can experiment with, which kind of flows back nicely into how quickly now you can iterate and build and ship. So I think that there's still going to need to be a role for building and for testing and shipping and running these sorts of experiments. But I think it's going to be available to everyone. For example, in my team in Nextwork, everyone is in Claude Code. Every single person in my team is shipping and using anything that they have to experiment, come up with new ideas, build new features. And I think that's going to become the way for everything. We're actually seeing an increase in the number of high school students and university students that are using Nextwork. I think largely because they're starting to realize that what they're learning, if you spend 2 years trying to learn how to ship or build something in a university or in a high school programming course, and then in 5 minutes you realize you can just do that on the fly. It's almost like an existential crisis that you go through, and it becomes much more about an act of creativity, I think, rather than an act of uh, the actual build itself. So it'll be interesting, I think. Yeah, it'll
Yeah.
become much.
What is since you brought up high school kids, we have one in our home. We have this ongoing conversation. What should he focus on? STEM, liberal arts, something else? What is your advice to young people today who are either in high school or in college. They're looking at the job market. If you were if somebody were to come and say, "What should I do?" Is STEM the right way to do it? Liberal
Mm.
arts. What would you say to them? How should they
Yeah,
think about their what is yeah, I guess how maybe the other way of asking this is how should they think about positioning themselves and marketing themselves when somebay shows up when you hire at Nextwork. The next hire, are you hiring an engineer? Are you hiring a product manager? Or are you hiring an AI native person?
I actually have a pretty strong opinion on this, and I'm really excited about it because I think that what this is forcing us to do is to, instead of focusing on actually subjects, we talk a lot about what to learn, STEM, humanities, like philosophy, arts, whatever it is. It's all very subject based. But my opinion of the future, and the one that I hope that Nextwork can help to create, is one where we focus on problems first. So my advice to a high school student would actually be: don't worry about the subject, focus on the problem. What problem are you passionate about? What do you want to try and solve for? Are you interested in solving for heart disease? Are you interested in looking at different marine biology cases? Are you interested in solving for space travel? Are you interested in solving for, whatever it is that you're interested in? The problem that you want to solve, I think, is where we need to start reorientating our skills and our education system to be focused on. It should be a problem first approach, knowing that the skills anyone can actually learn, that anyone has access to be able to do these things. So when I'm hiring at Nextwork, I really am looking for problem solvers. It doesn't really matter to me too much exactly what skills or background they have, because I know that with the tools and with the right abilities, people can really learn to execute on whatever they choose to execute. But I'm looking for evidence that someone has found something, a problem that they are passionate about, and they have gone to try and take steps to solve that. And can I see the proof of them actually doing that? Can I see what they've tried, what they've failed, what's worked? So I hope that in the future, instead of thinking about a software engineering degree or a department of psychology, or, I'm going to study like algebra or linear algebra too, I hope that instead we see like a department of world hunger, a department of unlimited renewable energy, that we see, a housing crisis, or whatever it is. I hope that we are organizing our skills and our work by problem to solve. I think that would be a much more productive way to approach it.
That's a very fascinating way of thinking about the future, and exciting, sort of setting goals and um, multidisciplinary way of using AI to achieve those goals. So that's really very inspiring. So what in that age of AI and sort of goal-based education, if you will, what does the credential look like? What does the modern resume look like in the age of AI? And how does one demonstrate what they've learned on next work? And yeah, is LinkedIn going to go away? Are resumes going away? What's your view on that?
Yeah. I mean, the crazy thing, I read somewhere that, 1 in 4 candidates for any job is going to be an AI fake by 2028. It's only like 2 years away.
One in
And
four. Wow.
before. Yeah, and the crazy thing about that, the reason for that is that creating a fake identity has gone, like, the cost of that has just completely gone down. You can look at all these like fantastic AI generation and avatars and voice and everything, and it's very, very cool. We tend to think, wow, this is going to be amazing. But on the flip side, it's actually very easy to create a fake identity. Even more than before. And so where I think we're going to see a rising problem in this is actually in trying to verify who someone is, or what skills they have when it comes to work. Already, it's quite difficult. It's no secret that a lot of people end up, elaborating or expanding the the truth a bit on resumes, or the need for hiring standards and tests and challenges is becoming more and more and more important. And to me, this really just highlights that there is an underlying problem here around trying to trust what someone can do, what skills someone has. Um, and the best solution that we have to this so far is something like GitHub. I would really turn to that as a great example of trust, a very
Mhm.
trusted platform because it's not trying to grade someone on good or bad. It doesn't give you an A, B, C, D for your code. It actually just shows it as it is. It's really trustworthy because it's transparent, because you can trace it back and you can see all of the work that has been done to get to that final stage. And that is exactly what Nextwork aims to do, but for all skills, not just skills that you can get add, get commit, get push, but for any skill, there should really be a portfolio that is able to point back to the actual work that someone has done, and to be transparent in that, to be something that people can go to. And if your work wasn't good, then your Nextwork portfolio isn't going to be looking too good either. And I think that's really, really important. A lot of the time, I think degrees and certifications lose trust because they're trying to get everyone to pass. They're trying to get everyone up to kind of like a passing grade, and in doing that, you actually end up eroding some of the trust that you have with society. And what does it mean to pass? What does it mean to get to the certain level? So that's why things like AWS certifications, Salesforce certifications, Azure certifications started to really quickly kind of fall off a cliff in terms of that trust conversation, because no
Mm.
one really knew the work that was going on behind it. Um, so, yeah, at Nextwork, what we're building is really this future resume. I do believe it will overtake LinkedIn in terms of a way to verify someone's work abilities, their skills, what they can actually produce. Um, and I think we're going to see this problem become very real in the next few years, in a way that we haven't really experienced before. So,
Um, as we wrap up, I want to ask you about entrepreneurship down under. You are in New Zealand, and we were introduced to each other by Cam Adams at Canva, where we've been lucky to be part of their journey since 2012. So, and they're based in Sydney, you're in Wellington. How is it to be an entrepreneur in New Zealand and in your neighboring country? What are the pros and cons, if you will, of starting a company there?
yeah, I think New Zealand is a really fantastic place to start a company, because everything is so accessible. You can really meet anyone that you want to meet, pretty easily. You could literally be sitting on a plane next to the prime minister. It's like it's a pretty easygoing country, and you can really start to get those connections in that network very, very quickly. So if you are introduced to one VC in New Zealand, or one other founder, then very quickly you will know all of the VCs and all of the founders in New Zealand, and that becomes really, really valuable when you're starting out, especially when it comes to things like building teams, hiring, kind of building that advisor group around you that can help to give you advice when you're not too sure what the next best move is. So in that way, New Zealand is really fantastic. There's also something to be said for being a little bit removed from like the hype bubble that can sometimes happen, because you end up just so laser focused on your internal team and what you're building, um, that you start to craft really, really strong culture. There isn't
Hmm.
really like a huge, as much of a poaching scene, for example, between startups in New Zealand, because the ecosystem is small. And so that means that the people who come to a startup, they're not in it because it's flashy. They're not in it because it's like going to look good. Uh, they're in it because you've somehow convinced them that this is the path that they should really commit to. So I think you end up with a really dedicated team, and you end up with a lot of focus. So those are the pros. Uh, the cons is everything that comes with a smaller ecosystem. The talent pool is smaller. For myself, I've probably over half, I think 5 out of 8 members of our small team have moved cities, if not countries, for the job. And so, again, like very high commitment level, but it does take more work. I have written letters to partners and family members. I have flown to go meet people. You really do have to, pull out all the stops to build your team. And then you are further away in terms of time zone and location from your end users. So for us, we have a lot of learners in the US, a lot of learners in other countries around the world, and you are just further away. So you end up doing weird time zones for events and things like that. And the capital market is smaller in New Zealand, but you can manage that a little better. You can definitely travel to the US and build those connections, which work out really well. So,
Like you have. Very well.
like I have,
Um,
yes, that's right.
uh, Last thing for you, imagine 10 years out, how does the world look uh, as Nextwork is the place that everyone goes to learn skills? And are we looking at, I mean, there's a lot of chatter about AI and the impact on society. And are we all going to be, as humans, essentially be subordinate to robots and living on universal basic income? Or is there a different future if we all sign up on Nextwork and get more AI native? How do you see it?
I definitely am an optimist by heart. I think that there are real risks with AI, but I think that it is in human nature to continuously build, create, want to improve. Sometimes just create problems for ourselves so that we can solve them and stay interested. I do think that we will always continue to create and build things, and I think that business and work is actually just a form of that creation done more at scale in a way that's meant to be sustained over a longer period of time. That is what I believe business to be. And so I think that there will always be a human a human drive to have a group of people that are creating things, that are providing a service of help to other people, and that will continue in the form of business. I think there will still be work for humanity to do. And I think that AI will be an increasingly exciting tool that you can use to have a wider impact faster. Um, I think it will just kind of raise the table stakes of what's possible. So, if you want to continue to be competitive in that space, if you want to have that impact, then it will become absolutely required that you have that baseline of AI knowledge. I think 10 years from now, Nextworks Nextworks vision is really like a three-part sort of mission. It's to teach all skills. It's to make sure all skills can be applied, actually used in society, useful, and then to create new skills, which in my mind is a reimagining of how things like a PhD program work. How does research work? Can we take that global look at what the world needs that we talked about before, and really use that to inform the creation and the research and the investment into new skills that can be created and brought to humanity to be used in some sort of positive manner. So those three things is what I really believe in 10 years from now, that Nextwork will be able to teach all skills that are available on the planet, that these skills will be able to be applied in a trusted manner to society in a way that people are going to understand. And then the third one is that we have some of the greatest research facilities in the world, Nextwork labs, to be able to help create new skills that is going to move humanity forward at a faster rate. So I can't wait. I say 10 years from now, let's do it.
It can come fast enough. Well, I have to say, I think my mom was a high school math teacher for 40 years in Bombay, in India, and education and skills development has always been part of my life. And um, I love what you're doing and your passion and authenticity and just the bold vision you have is so hopeful and energizing, and that's what we need in the age of AI. So thank you for sharing your thoughts, and congrats on all your success, and a lot more is to come soon.
Amazing. Thank you so much. It's been fun. Thank you.